All right, first test up for this experiment is melting point. This is our unknown solid, and it's sitting in a watch glass. And what I have right here is called a melting point capillary tube. It's a very, very skinny tube. It's closed on one end. It's like a long, skinny test tube, basically. Closed on one end, open on the other. So we take this open end, add the open end into our solid, like so. Kind of jam some of the solid into the open end. That should be enough. Then we take this capillary tube and we're going to drop it through this, well, it's called a drop tube. We drop it closed in first, down this tube, and the melting point capillary impacts on this rubber stopper that I have right here. Basically what this does is it packs the solid material to the bottom of our capillary tube. So, there's the solid. Material's up at the top right now. Put the capillary tube into the drop tube and drop it. And it packs down to the bottom of the capillary tube. Our solid material is now packed into the bottom of the capillary tube. All right, so remove our sample. And what we do next, we take our sample over here to a melting point apparatus. This is a melting point apparatus. It's basically like a little oven. The sample goes in the side chamber over here. So the little ports that you can insert your sample like so. I'll do that now. And it goes in one of these holes. That goes inside the oven that's contained inside this chamber. And you control the temperature of the oven through these controls. And once your sample's inside, like so, you look through this magnifying glass at your sample. You can see the sample moving around here. I'll have a better image in just a second. And so you start the oven and let the temperature rise. And you can examine the sample, watch it very closely, and you can see when it starts to melt. And when it starts to melt, you come down here and you take the temperature at which the sample is melting. That's basically it for the melting point apparatus. And the next little segment will be watching the sample. It'll probably take 2 or 3 minutes. We'll watch it closely, and then we'll record the temperature at which it melts. You should start to see it melt. It's starting to liquefy now. And notice the change. See? Over there to the right. That's melting. And the temperature is 55 degrees. All right, next up, solubility. The solubility test of our sample. Here's our sample. Watch glass, I placed a little of the material on each of these little pieces of paper. This is wax paper called weighing paper. This weighing paper is designed to, I guess, to inhibit static electricity so your powder, your sample doesn't stick to it. And typically use it weighing stuff out on analytical balance. It's very, very slippery, so your sample slides off nicely when you're trying to transfer it, like in this case, to a test tube. So, two test tubes here. This test tube contains ethanol. Ethanol here in this test tube. There's ethanol. E is for ethanol. W is for water. Water. So we're going to test the solubility of this substance in ethanol and water. So we add sample to ethanol. And there it is. See the material in there. So what we need to do is kind of agitate it, shake it up, and see if this thing dissolves. Right, dissolving, the solid will disappear entirely, and the liquid will remain clear after the solid disappears. So it may take a few minutes. Keep shaking. It looks like it's dissolving. See if we get more contrast here. That's better. So some of the solid's still there. You can see it. Just keep shaking. Set the sample aside. That's the ethanol. So let's go ahead and put some of the material in water. Here's my second bit of sample here. And into the water. There's a solid sample in water. Right. So we're going to let these sit. I'll agitate for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and see what these samples look like. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes. I've been agitating these back and forth like so. And this is the ethanol sample E. And the sample. How about if I hold up the light here? That'd be better. Looks pretty clear to me. I don't see anything on the bottom. Let's look at the water. The water sample, W. You can clearly see stuff still in the water. Okay, so you have to make a call on solubility. These two, this substance, these two solvents, ethanol and water. Is it soluble in ethanol? Is it soluble in water? Alright, so the next thing we have to do is do a test for slightly soluble. So slightly soluble is when we put this material in hot water, for example. This is the hot bath. So I take my ethanol sample. Probably no need to do that one. Hint, hint. And we take a water sample and we set it in this hot water bath. So what this is going to do is going to heat up the water that's contained in this test tube. and in turn heat up the sample. And if it's insoluble at room temperature, you heat it up, but it then becomes soluble, we consider that to be slightly soluble. Slightly soluble. Right, for this test anyway, for this experiment. Okay. So swirl the material like so. Let's see if it dissolves in elevated temperature. Okay, so maybe after 90 seconds, sitting in this hot water, we'll look at the sample. There it is. Well, solid's no longer there, but what is that? This little blob is down at the bottom. This blob doesn't look like it's going into the water phase. What could that blob be? What could that blob be? Now, you have to figure that out. I'm not going to tell you. But I'll give you a hint. It's related to the first test that we did on this material. Okay, on to the test for the unknown liquid. This is our unknown liquid. And now I'm going to perform an experiment as described in the pre-lab video to determine the density of this liquid. It's graduated cylinder. Graduated cylinder. These are the graduation marks. And these are in units of milliliters. Milliliters. Okay, that number 60 looks like it's been erased away. That's 40, 50, and 60 milliliters. Okay, now on to the next part of the experiment, boiling point of the unknown. At the unknown sample and a test tube, what you see below there are something called boiling stones. It just helps this solution boil when you heat it up. It doesn't change the boiling point temperature, it just helps it boil. So basically, so this solution does not become superheated. Down here I have water, and it's been heated to near boiling. And I have a magnetic stir down there. There's a little magnet underneath the heating plate that spins and in turn spins a magnet. And that just makes sure that the heat that that's being heated down here at the bottom is evenly distributed throughout the water bath. Okay. I have a digital thermometer, and this digital thermometer will measure in Celsius. So right now the room temperature is about 23.8 degrees Celsius. Now I use this digital thermometer to insert into this test tube and measure the boiling point. So what I need to do now is lower this sample into the water bath. I'm going to do this with one hand. There we go. Sample being heated. You see it's just, most of the sample is above the water. Just the very bottom is being heated. And that's enough, that's fine. And I don't know if You can see our sample is beginning to boil now. So let's go ahead and start measuring the temperature. I just want to suspend this tip just at the very surface of our sample, like so. Hope we can read that. There we go. Here's the temperature. Here's the sample. Seems to be boiling pretty good. End of test.